1984's Ghost Warrior, known in the UK and some parts of Europe as the much more intriguing Swordkill, is a film that's been on my radar for quite some time now. If memory serves, I first heard about this when a chat on one of the VHS groups I frequent turned to "What's the weirdest film you've ever seen?" And after reading a brief plot, that and the title of the film is literally Swordkill, all as one word, I was pretty much sold on it. It took a little while to get my hands on an authentic VHS copy of this movie. It's not rare by any measure, it's just that it was a little bit too expensive for a film that realistically I was taking a gamble on. But either way, I have it. I've watched it, and yeah, it's alright. Not breathtaking, but it's alright. Its weirdness doesn't really lie in what happens in the film, nor does it lie in the characters or the acting style. The whole film is just structured strangely. It comes across like it should be some kind of grand 2-hour epic, but for whatever reason, be it time, budget, or that the writer on this just gave up on it, the act structure is just completely to cock. Don't get me wrong, the first act's about as first acty as you can get, but Act 3 is drastically underwritten and appears to have melted and homogenised into the second act, creating a film that feels like, from around the 50-minute mark, it's trying to simultaneously end the film while setting up the final act for the film. It's difficult to explain. I suppose the closest I can come to describing it is that from the 50-minute point onwards, I kept flicking wildly between thinking, oh, the film's going to end soon. Well, that was quick. And this exposition's a bit bloated. I wonder when they're going to set up the end of the film. And those conflicting feelings ran with me right the way through to the end credits, which caught me by surprise as I was certain there was going to at least be another 5 to 10 minutes of winding down the cast and making it not feel as abrupt as it did. The film opens in Japan in 1552 as we follow a travelling army. They've recently taken a hostage, fled to a snowy mountainous region and are doing a damn fine job of looking the part of typical villains. That is until Yoshimitsu, Yoshi for short, arrives on the scene. Yoshi is a shogun samurai and a member of the Japanese Royal Guard, or at least a high-ranking member of a much-respected Japanese clan. Both are thrown about throughout the film, so it's either one or the other. It transpires that the hostage this army have taken is none other than Yoshi's wife, and Yoshi isn't too keen on them keeping her. So he quickly dismantles the army and tries to fight the leader. However, at the last minute he decides to spare the army chief, who then promptly kills Yoshi's wife, causing Yoshi to try and take out the head army chief, only to plummet off a cliff face into the freezing pools below, presumably dead. Only not really, because we then flash forward to 1984, where 2 Japanese explorers find a recently revealed underground cavern and on entering find Yoshi perfectly preserved in the ice. We then jump forward a few weeks ahead in time and over to America, where scientists are publicly performing an autopsy on Yoshi while privately working to see if they can bring him back to life due to how he was preserved. This is where we're introduced to Chris, a female reporter who's been invited to document the private resurrection by Dr. Alan Richards. They run some tests, do the Frankenstein meets Rocky Horror-esque resurrection sequence, and Yoshi regains a pulse. We then jump forward even further in time and Yoshi is transferred to a hospital where after weeks of recuperation he eventually regains consciousness. Chris and Alan go to meet with Yoshi and while taking a liking to Chris, it's made clear that Yoshi and Alan don't really see eye to eye. We then spend even more time slowly fleshing out Yoshi as a character. We see flashbacks to his life when he was with his wife, and we see him and Chris develop a good friendship, as Chris slowly learns more about 16th century Japanese etiquette and culture so as to make Yoshi feel more comfortable in his hospital room, with ultimately the plan being to reintegrate him into society. This all falls apart, however, when one of the night staff finds out that Yoshi's katana is worth more money than God and decides to try and take it. Yoshi spots the porter and cuts him down in his tracks before leaving his hospital room and heading out into the city. The film then splits down 2 paths. Yoshi's story is basically him being freaked out by modern things. He saves an old man from some punks by killing them. This then causes a massive fight between even more punks and Yoshi. Yoshi wins. The 6 deaths from the gangs lead the police to try and take action, and by extension a full manhunt is called to bring the completely unaware Yoshi to justice. Meanwhile, the staff don't realise Yoshi has walked out of the hospital till the morning after, and when the first 3 punks are killed, word hits the science facility and Dr. Alan and Chris head out to try and recapture Yoshi and return him to the facility. Albeit they have very different opinions on what to do when he's captured, which plays heavily in Acts 2 and 3, as Alan believes Yoshi should be destroyed, and Chris believes he should be given a fluent Japanese speaker and taught to fully integrate into society. As the 2 butt heads and Yoshi's confusion and other issues continue to arise, will Yoshi be able to better integrate and have a prosperous future? Or is he just one Swordkill away from becoming a ghost warrior? I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. This film was brought to us by J. Larry Carroll, who oversaw directing duties here. As a director, this is his only credit. But that's because he was seemingly busy being involved in every other film and television production between 1974 and 1988. He's mainly known for writing, with credits including, amongst many, many more, Tourist Trap, The Day Time Ended, He-Man, She-Ra, The Thundercats, Star Trek The Next Generation, and the original Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles cartoon series. He also produced Laser Blast and the infamous adult fairy tales. But it doesn't end there. He also had involvement with Wes Craven's The Hills Have Eyes, and he edited the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. In short, he got around a fair bit. Even though he only has 1 directing credit to his name, his one and only attempt isn't all that awful. In terms of directing the cast, I would say it's perfectly competent, and in some places actually pretty solid. Hell, it blows a massive chunk of the directors I've covered on this channel out of the water, many of whom have spent their entire careers honing these skills. The same goes for the direction of the Cine, really. While it's maybe a touch on the bland side, there are a few great little shot setups here and there. To see someone so effortlessly turn out something that's of this quality first time out, only to never do it again, is actually pretty impressive to me. I'll always wonder what his style would have developed into had he done a couple more features. But hey, he's a busy guy based on his IMDb, so while I wasn't blown away, it sits on the right side of the fence, so to speak. On the subject of Cine, again, it's pretty decent. Not breathtaking, but it more than holds its own against some of the dreck that's funneled its way onto my screen in the last 10 years. That's not to excuse it, it could be better. But it does a more than reasonable job. There's a good variety of shot types, and there's been some clear planning on shots to make sure that the best elements of the picture are showcased to the best of their ability. Of note, the opening of the film looks particularly cinematic, even though it could have maybe done with a few more extras here and there. Equally, there's a sequence in an underground tunnel that looks gorgeous for the most part and had some really creative lighting present. Performance-wise, well, for the most part it's pretty solid. We're not talking Oscar winning here, but enjoyable and entertaining is as good as it gets with this type of film, and here it's got the entertainment in spades. Hiroshi Fujioka, apart from being Kamen Rider, plays Yoshi with a wide-eyed confusion and a stoic dourness that not only fits that of a shogun, but that of his unique character. We don't get to know a lot about Yoshi, but by the end of the movie, I felt I knew him a lot better than I probably actually did. Janet Julian is also great as Chris, bringing an April O'Neil quality to the movie and providing a strong and clear character that really contrasts with John Calvin's Alan Richards. Calvin's is pretty good too, though I kind of feel like had he maybe gone just a tiny bit more arseholey in terms of his delivery and performance, he would have made a much more impressionable character overall. Just a half tick more towards RoboCop and I think he really would have hit his stride. That being said, RoboCop was 3 years away when this film came out, so I suppose I am asking a bit much. Representing on the writing front we have Tim Kernan, who, well, he has writing credits. But apart from this and the movie Forbidden World, he doesn't really have a tremendously memorable bibliography. Due to the lack of credits, it quickly becomes apparent as to exactly why the writing kind of falls down a little bit here. The dialogue isn't the sharpest in the world, and the captioning used for Yoshi is seemingly some of the sharpest dialogue on show here. Throw in the aforementioned really weird tonal choices in the pacings for the second and third acts, and you end up with a bit of a hodgepodge at times, unfortunately. I suppose it's down to viewer preference, however. I know plenty of people who'd be really pissed off at having to sit through this noodly mess of half-plots and poor dialogue choices, but equally I know people who would have probably loved the unusual textures created by this film in terms of showing the audience what happens when and how. I think they get a kick out of the dialogue, and if I was being blunt, I think the writing style and tone of this film will be a make or break for most people. It's a total Marmite movie from that regard. You'll either really get on with it, or you'll find it really annoying. For me, I think had the direction and Cine been a bit stronger, I'd have outright loved this one. But because for the most part they're simply passable, it means that the film overall kind of suffers because of that. But not so much that it drags it into being an unpleasant watch. It's just alright. It's not one that I'm in a rush to watch again, but I did enjoy it. Also, and this is the part where I get to be nitpicky, I found a bit of a continuity error, or at least something that isn't picked up on in the film. So Yoshi was frozen in the year 1552 and wakes up in the US in 1984. But the first white person didn't visit Japan until 1543, and further travels to Japan wouldn't have occurred until the early 1550s at the absolute earliest, and that's assuming that the European explorers who landed there literally raced immediately home to tell people and then came back out again. Based on the information in this film, I've determined, and I could well be wrong here, that Yoshi's home village was in Sakamoto, but the first Europeans landed in Tanegashima, which is a full 16 hours drive or nearly a full 3 days walk using modern roads to get there. So I find it very hard to believe that Yoshi would have known that people of different ethnicities even existed, let alone that there were places with those people in abundance. So when he wakes up in the US surrounded by people who look completely differently to him and who speak in an alien language, the fact that he's so calm and reserved about the whole thing is just tonally and completely odd. For all he knows, he's been abducted by aliens. Not that he'd know what aliens were, as the first documented account of an alien sighting wasn't until 1639. But you know what I mean. I personally would have been quite a bit more freaked out and prone to running off. Yoshi just wakes up surrounded by people who don't look or sound anything like him, and he's just like, whatevs. I think other than the script, the only other problem this film has is its score, which is absolutely and totally forgettable. Seriously, I couldn't hum you one note of the Swordkill soundtrack. Hell, I'm not even sure if it had a soundtrack, it was that ineffective. Its absence, or rather lack of presence, didn't really affect me, but then I suppose if it had a more punchy and unique soundtrack, it may have beefed up some of the Cinean direction and given this movie a much needed lift. Ghost Warrior was released as Swordkill in the UK in 1984 by EIV. It was initially a pre-cert and had to be amended with stickers for its rental and retail release, as it appears to have been released just before the 1984 Video Recordings Act was put into practice. It has since had a DVD and Blu-ray release worldwide as Ghost Warrior, both in the UK under 101 Films and in the US under Scream Factory as part of a double feature pack. While I can't comment on the PQ of those releases, though I will be checking them out the next chance I get, the VHS copy struggles heavily in the darker segments, but complements the daytime and more well-lit shots very well. This is an early release for Empire Pictures, who you'll probably best know for being the original company of one Charles Band, now of Full Moon Entertainment infamy. Band produced this film, and had I not looked at the fine print on the VHS box art, I'd have never have guessed it. It has more in line with Troma than Empire, if you asked me. Despite its flaws and the fact that I was originally led to believe I was going to be in for a weird and wonderful time, there's a lot in Ghost Warrior that makes it worth checking out. It's by no means a rush-out-to-see title, but it is enjoyable. Probably best consumed alongside a couple of ales as part of a marathon. I'd say if you're looking for my stamp of approval, you've got it here. Just manage your expectations a little bit and I'm sure you'll enjoy it.